everyone, welcome to the I Can Crochet That YouTube channel. Today we are learning how to do the crunch stitch. This is what I used to make the Yvette baby blanket, and I used a solid color yarn with a self-striping yarn. And if you're familiar with any of our patterns over here, then you know that mixing those two is one of our absolute favorites. I love using self-striping yarn for many reasons. One of those is that I don't have to weave in all the ends when you're making color changes. But for today's video, I am not going to use self-striping because we won't be working enough stitches for you to see the effect. But I will be using two colors. I'll be using a cream colored and a yellow color, so you can see how I change colors without fastening off the yarn and how I bring it up the sides. And then we'll end it with how I do the border to cover up the yarn ups on the side, and also the ribbed border for the Yvette baby blanket. All right, I'm excited. Let's get started. So for the crunch stitch, it is a multiple of 2 plus 1. So for today's video, I'm going to chain 15. So for the Yvette baby blanket, I start with the cream colored yarn. So we've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. All right, we've got our 15 chains, and then we are going to do a half double crochet in the second chain from the hook. So not this one, not this one, but this one, the second chain from the hook, in a half double crochet. If you're not familiar with it, you yarn over, insert your hook in that chain, yarn over again, bring up a loop. You have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3, and that is a half double crochet. For the next stitch, we're going to do a slip stitch. So slip stitch is insert your hook into the chain, yarn over, bring up a loop. You have 2 loops on your hook, and then you're going to pull that first loop through the second loop on your hook, and that is a slip stitch. We'll do it again in a minute. All right, the next one is a half double crochet. Again, yarn over, insert your hook in the chain, yarn over again, bring up a loop, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, and then a slip stitch. Insert your hook in the chain, yarn over, bring up a loop, 2 loops on your hook, pull this first loop through the second loop on your hook, and that is a slip stitch. Now for the crunch stitch, it is you just alternate half double crochet with slip stitches, and that is it. Super simple. The texture is so beautiful, and it's just, I've really fallen in love with this stitch, and can see me definitely using it in quite a few more patterns. So like I said, for the rest of the row, we're just going to alternate half double crochet and slip stitch all the way across. And we will end with a slip stitch. Another great thing about the crunch stitch is that it's a 1 row repeat. You always start your row with a half double crochet, and it always ends with a slip stitch. So if you're working the pattern and you're not ending with a slip stitch, but you're ending with a half double crochet, then you know that you have done something wrong. So anyway, all right, let's just work the rest of the chain, alternating half double crochet and slip stitches. Okay, so we did, the last stitch was a slip stitch. Now for the Yvette baby blanket, the first row I just did 1 row of cream, and that's because the border and the rib stitch border is done in the cream, and I just like how it looked better starting with 1 row of cream instead of 2 rows. But for the rest of the blanket, we are going to alternate every 2 rows, switching colors. But for this first row, do cream, do 1 row of cream, and then switch to the next color. Now, usually in crochet, when you're switching colors, you switch colors when you're finishing the stitch. So let's say we ended this row with a half double crochet. So to switch colors, if we ended it with a half double crochet, when I had 3 loops on the hook, that is when I would introduce the new color and pull it through all the loops. But after some experimenting, since we're ending with a slip stitch, it looked better and just worked better to actually switch colors on the chain 1. So that's what we're going to do for the rest of the pattern, is you'll switch to the next color on the chain 1. So just add that new color, chain 1, and then turn. Now for this first one, changing colors, you'll have to kind of tighten the stitches a little bit, but then for the rest of them it's nice and easy. All right, so now we switch to the yellow, and the chain 1 does not count as a stitch, so you look for that next stitch, and we're going to do a half double crochet into that stitch. Half double crochet, and then the next one we're doing a slip stitch. Half double crochet and slip stitch. Continue alternating those all the way across the row until you get to the end. All right, we're at the last stitch, and we do a slip stitch. And now we're going to chain 1 and turn. And one thing I forgot to mention is that when we switch colors from the cream to the yellow, you do not fasten off the cream. That's just hanging out there, and I'll show you what to do with it in a minute. But we do not fasten off colors until we're done with the blanket, which is nice because then you don't have a ton of ends to weave in. So all right, now we're going to do our second row with the yellow. So again, we chained 1. Chain 1 does not count as a stitch, so we go into that second stitch, half double crochet and slip stitch, half double crochet and slip stitch all the way across. All right, we're going to come to the last stitch, and we do a slip stitch. So now we're ready to go back to the cream color, and we are not going to fasten off the yellow, but we're going to take the cream, we're going to bring it up, and we're going to chain 1 with it. And you'll see, I'll show you in a minute after we do a few rows, you'll see how the yarn ups they're just on one side, but you'll see how there's yarn ups all the way along this side, and then I'll show you how to cover it up with a border. So leave that yellow hanging out there, chain 1 with the cream and turn, and then again half double crochet in that first stitch. And like I said, you'll have to kind of tighten up the color that's kind of hanging there. You have to tighten it up a little bit. All right, slip stitch, half double crochet. We're going to do that for 2 rows with the cream and then switch back to the yellow. Okay, we just did 2 rows with the cream. Now we're ready to switch back to the yellow. So bring that yellow up along the side, drop the cream, tighten it a little bit, chain 1 and turn. And again, half double crochet in that first stitch. And I noticed that I had to tighten the color that was just kind of hanging there. I always had to tighten it every time I switch colors. Just tighten that a little bit so that it's nice and clean on the edges. And as you can see right here, that's the yarn up of switching to the new color. And there's the yarn up of the cream. And that'll all be just along one side, excuse me. So you only have to focus on covering up those yarn ups with the border on one side, and then the rest of the borders are super easy, which I will show you that in a few minutes. Okay, so let's just work a few more rows. We've got a nice block here to work with, and then you can really start to see the texture come into shape and just a beautiful stitch. Now imagine doing this with self-striping yarn. I'm telling you, if you've never worked with self-striping yarn, it is so satisfying when the next color change happens. And it keeps me from being easily distracted, I think, and wanting to switch to a new pattern and not getting bored. That's one reason why I love self-striping yarn. So, but yeah, all right, let's just do a few more rows and then meet me back here and we will move on to the border. So we've done several rows. As you can see, the texture of the crunch stitch is just really pretty. So this is what the back side looks like. You can kind of see the other color peeking out. So I would call that the back side, and this side the front side. Like I mentioned for the Yvette baby blanket, I started with 1 row of cream, and then all the rest of the rows were every 2 rows you switch colors. And the very last row, we're going to end on 1 row of cream so that it matches the bottom. And when you get to that last row of cream, you're going to fasten off the other color. In this case, it's the yellow. In the pattern, it's fastening off the self-striping yarn. but you're not going to fasten off the cream colored, because now we're going to move on to the border. All right, as I mentioned, there's just one side that has the yarn ups that you're going to have to cover with the border. You only have to worry about that on one side. All right, well, let's do this first side border. So with the cream colored yarn, you're going to chain 1, and you're going to evenly do single crochets all the way down. So some of this is just personal preference when it comes to the borders, where you're going to insert your hook to do the single crochets. Some people like to do it just one loop. I typically like to do it a little bit tighter in so that it's a little more secure. So I'll show you what I mean. All right, chain 1, find that first little hole right there, which is row 1, and do a single crochet. Then find the next row, single crochet, and the next row, single crochet, and just do that evenly all the way down. And you may need to experiment with where you're placing your hook to make sure that you like the way it looks. If you're putting too many single crochets, then it's going to be wavy. If you're not doing enough, then it's going to be really tight. So just make sure it's going into every row and that it looks nice and even. Okay, so we're coming to that last row. We are going to do a single crochet in that very last row. And then we're going to chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So that's what it's looking like right now, but we're going to build this rib stitch this way, and so this is the end of the blanket. All right, so you just did 7 chains, and then we're going to do a single crochet in the second chain from the hook. So find that second chain from the hook. A single crochet is insert your hook, bring up a loop. You have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2. That's a single crochet. So you're going to do 6 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, so now we are along the edge here. You're going to find that second chain. So you just did a single crochet in that last row. So now you're going to say find that second chain, and we're going to slip stitch in that one, and we're going to slip stitch in the next chain. So slip stitch in the next 2 chains, and then turn. And now we're going to single crochet in the back loop only of those single crochets you just did. So find that first one. So sometimes it helps to count down from the first chain, the first single crochet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is the one that we're going to go into, and we're going to go into the back loop only. So with crochet, there's a front loop and there's a back loop. We're going to go into this back loop only, and we're going to do 6 single crochets along. So find that back loop and single crochet. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So 6 single crochets, chain 1, turn again, and we're going to do 6 single crochets back loop only all the way down the chain again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, so look for that next chain, and we're going to slip stitch in the next 2 chains. So slip stitch and slip stitch, turn, count down to find that 6th single crochet. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 right there. Find that back loop and single crochet in the back loops. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Chain 1 again. So you can see that it's starting to get that ribbing effect, doing the back loop only. And so we're just going to do that all the way across until we get to the very end. So again, you are single crocheting in the back loop only, and then you're slip stitching into the next 2 chains, and then you're single crocheting back loop only all the way across. The only time you're going to chain 1 is at the end. You do not chain 1 down here. So let's do a few more of these until we get to the end, and then I'll show you how to cover up those yarn ups on the side. So we've done the ribbing all the way across, and we slip stitch into that last chain on the end, and now we're ready to do our single crochets evenly along this side. And this side, you really have to pay attention that you're getting those yarn ups into your single crochet, because if not, then those are going to look really messy, just kind of hanging out there. So make sure you're getting all of those when you're single crocheting down the side. So insert your hook into that first row and do a single crochet, and find the next row, and again make sure you're getting that yarn up in your single crochet. Single crochet, look for the next one, single crochet for that next one, getting both of those yarn ups, and then the next one. And again, just evenly single crocheting all the way along the side while making sure you're covering up those yarn ups with your single crochet. And we'll weave those ends in at the very end. Okay, so we've come to the end of side 2. So that's side 1, or that's edge 1, no, side 1, edge 1, and then this is side 2. And so now we're at edge 2. So we've come to the very end, and we're going to again chain 7 to start our rib stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. We're going to single crochet in the second chain from the hook and all the way down. You should have 6 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Find that first stitch on the end and slip stitch. Oops, problem grabbing that. Slip stitch into that first stitch and then turn and do your 6 single crochets in the back loop only all the way across. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Chain 1, turn, 6 single crochets in the back loop only all the way down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that last one can be a little tricky to find, and 6. Find that next chain, slip stitch into that and into the next one, so into the next 2. So we're doing exactly what we did on the other side. We are doing single crochet back loop only, up and down, chaining 1 on the end, and then doing the slip stitch into the next 2 chains across. Okay, let's finish this row out, and then I'll meet you back here when we're all done. I've gone all the way across the row, and now I'm at the very last one. So I'm going to find that first single crochet that I did on that first side, and I'm going to slip stitch into that single crochet, and then fasten off, and you just have a few ends to weave in from when we first changed colors. And that is the Yvette baby blanket, the crunch stitch with 2 different colors, finished off with a rib stitch border. I hope you enjoyed this stitch as much as I did, and hope you enjoy making the Yvette baby blanket. The PDF that is available for purchase has several different sizes and the starting chains and how many rows you need to do. And you can find that on our Etsy shop or our I Can Crochet That shop. So thank you for joining me today, and look for more of our patterns that involve self-striping yarn. You will find a ton of them on icancrochetthat.com and tutorials here on YouTube. Happy crocheting!